didn't know even, I didn't even know how to figure out who I was at midlife, going through midlife crisis at the, 35, 36, 37. And I had been a successful business person. And I'll read a couple of excerpts from the book just to kind of get you oriented to the journey that I have been on. And I suspect that millions of other people are on as well. And so this book is a retrospect of what are the steps that I took? What kind of attitudes, what kind of beliefs did I have coming into this midlife crisis? What did I do to unravel those things or to get underneath those things or beyond those things? And what we're going to be doing for the next 21 weeks is doing a retrospect of the book, which was 12 years ago now, 13 years ago, to a retrospect of what was going on with me in my life at 1985. Okay, so here, and we have a special guest. Part of the book was written, and I asked my friends, my colleagues, my students, my loved ones around me to say, hey, do you want to write a short story, like a page and a half, 2 pages of indication of how this particular principle out of the 21 applies to you? What were you living? A real lives, actual story, autobiographical in nature, that pinpoints or highlights that particular principle. So the very first one is with Ranson, and I'll introduce Ann in a moment after I do some excerpts out of the book to kind of tee it up for the 21 series that we're going to put within the Tuesdays with Peter. So I'm excited, and so welcome. All right, so let me get my share screen up here. And here we go. So, positively brilliant self-mastery. This is the beginning of that 21-week exploration into becoming one's core self, what I now call core self, or that positively brilliant sense of self. So what is self-mastery? My simple definition of self-mastery is knowing, actually understanding, knowing. Second of all, living it. Third of all, celebrating your innate and positively brilliant self. It's right out of the book. And I have further developed that into, you can call it your positively brilliant self, you can call it your core self, your authentic self. All of those are the same for me. That is what self-mastery is. Principle number 1 out of the 21 that we're going to be going through is you are connected to an infinite and life-affirming divine source. And like I said, Ann Ranson is our special guest contributor. She wrote this part of it, in her own words, is the way I say it, in her own words, part of principle number 1 in the book. And she'll be here to read it out loud for the first time ever. I've never done this before, so this is going to be a grand experiment. And it'll also be an opportunity for you to ask questions or to share your journey of this part of it, of how do you connect with your sense of an infinite, life-affirming divine source, okay? So to give you some context of the book, and this comes out of the introduction in the book, word for word, I'm just going to read it out loud here for you. And I don't plan on reading the whole book to you, by the way, so you can be assured of that. Once we get the grounding of what this is all about, then we'll get into much more of a discussion mode and interview mode. In 1985, okay, I was living in Tokyo, Japan. Well, in 1985, I was mostly a workaholic without an actual life. At 37 years old, I was incompetent at living my own life. Everyone else had defined or dictated to me who I was, what I needed to do, and who I should be to be successful, to earn a good living, be promoted, and generally get ahead in this world. And as it turns out, I was very successful in getting ahead in this world. My world at that time was international business. I was earning more than $100,000 a year. I looked it up last night. That would be the equivalent of almost 300,000 today. Okay, 1985 dollars. I was on a corporate management fast track, or what is now known as a high potential. I could and did travel anywhere in the world I wanted to go. And I had no idea who I really was or what I was really meant to be doing. 23 years later, okay, this is in the 2008 when I'm writing the book. 23 years later, I know who I really am. Now I am competent to live and celebrate my own life. But in 1985, I was lost. The one place I had never visited was that deep place inside me that I believed was a dark and frightening abyss. Again, directly out of the book, and it came directly out of my journal because I still love journaling. So I have a note, and this word for word that's in the book. From my journal on November 30th, 1985, Tokyo, Japan. Say what others want, even when it hurts myself. I don't rate a self. Do what's expected to keep everyone happy, but do not count self. I'm so frustrated I could scream. Better not scream, I might hurt someone. Trapped to please them all. I broke the facade and their rules. Now free and scared. I felt desperately isolated and empty inside. I was barricaded behind a facade of worldly success. My compulsion to please others had preempted me from really knowing myself. If it was possible to convert self-worth to net worth, at 37 years old, I could not have afforded the price of a 320 yen subway ticket to travel 5 kilometers from the Tokyo station to where I worked. 320 yen in those days was probably about $1.25. Okay. That's the condition that I found myself as I was reflecting in 2008, writing this book about where I was in 1985 and the journey that it took me on. The book itself is structured under 5 different sections. I'm not going to get into all of that today, but the first section is your infinite divine nature. So in these 3 principles, the first 3 principles, we explore our divine nature and how it supports and informs who we are. Principle 1 again today that we're going to be going into. We'll be talking about in depth. Next week, we'll be talking about principle number 2, your divine nature is resourceful, whole, and complete. And 2 weeks from now, it'll be principle 3, you have direct access to your divine source anytime you choose. Okay, so that's kind of the structure of the book and the upcoming next principles under the category, the section, your infinite divine nature. Now, with all of that as a preface, principle number 1, I have a quote, little quote, because I love quotes under each principle. We are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And I don't know where the originator was. I know there's a lot of people that quote that, some famous spokesmen and authors and public speakers. But I can't figure out the origin of that. And it's probably before my lifetime. So we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And I really, really believe that. Now, for me, it took being aware and accepting 3 truths about myself and my life before I could even open up to the possibility and desperate hope that there was a divine something. Because I didn't have that connection with a divine being, a divine essence, a divine source in 1985. Just didn't. I was brought up a Christian, a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, had gone through Christian schools, high school and university. And I was so disconnected from anything that would have been the divine that it was ridiculous. So here are the 3 things that I did know. In 1985, I had come to the kind of the eureka moment of my way of working isn't working. Number 1, my way of living had no life to it. I felt empty inside, and my self-worth was bankrupt. So that's the motivating forces that finally said, okay, wake up time. I guess the midlife crisis is real. I can't skip over that. Thank you very much. And that was a state of mind that I was in 1985. Now, as part of the book and part of the richness of this is, again, I asked colleagues of mine to write a story and raised their hand right away and said, Peter, I want to write about the first principle. And so what I have in the book is 2 or 3 pages of my concept of what that is all about. And then there's a couple of pages of information or a story that's written by someone other than me. And I am so incredibly delighted to have Anne. And do you have, well, let me introduce Anne. Let me get Cello to get us pinned up here so that the 2 of us are on the same screen. And I say Vivek, which is not Anne. Hi, Vivek. Good to have you here. Vivek hails from India. And let me just get out of this so that I can be, there we go. So welcome, Anne. So great to see you.
Oh, Peter, this is so exciting to get reconnected with you and with this brilliant material. So thank you for having me.
I am loving it. You look awesome, girl, and just full of life and vitality.
Absolutely.
And as Anne said before we got started today, she said, yep, I got the blue memo as well. So we're both in blue. My favorite color.
Yes.
So Anne, would you like to read this excerpt? Do you have that handy, or I can put it up on the screen? Either way. Okay, great. So if you could just read that out. I want everybody to sit back at like a story time and say, okay, so this is about Anne's part of her personal life that she chose to share publicly. And if you could just read it out, and then we can talk a little bit about it after that. How's that?
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I heard myself say, for years, I've felt a strong connection to God. That connection has taken on a much deeper meaning in recent years. I used to think that I was in control. I thought of myself as spiritual, yet I was also clear that I had power. After all, I was successful in business, had strong family and friend relationships, so I wasn't doing such a bad job now, was I? All of that changed at the turn of the millennium. A coincidence? And so the changes began. First was a revelation that came as I was reading Who Moved My Cheese. As I read, what would you do if you weren't afraid? I heard a voice say, quit your job and move to DC. I was certain that something was broken inside me, as there was no one else in the room, yet the voice was as real as any I had heard. Next, I heard myself say to my son, let's move, a rare occurrence for a native Texan. Thus began my path of hearing myself say many life-changing things. After living in the DC area for more than 4 years, I again heard myself say, let's move back to Texas. This was totally unexpected, yet there we were packing again. During the process of saying goodbye to a friend, I heard myself say, would you like for me to coach you? She replied enthusiastically, yes. What had I just said? I had a full-time job as a sales and marketing professional. This simple question led me to a total career change, becoming a professional coach and public speaker. Many times since, I have heard myself say things that I know are sourced from God. My connection is constant and strong. Now I'm not surprised when I hear myself say, as I know that God is once again leading me to a place I couldn't have imagined on my own. Sorry.
And that's, yeah, wow. So what comes up as you read that in the moment? And I see emotions taking place, a fondness, or what's happening?
Well, I think it's so many things, there's a little nostalgia, for those times in DC and making those choices, a little nostalgia around because this is where I met you, this
Mhm.
was the path that led me to you and Marcia and y'all's training.
Yeah.
And then I think the other piece of it is that I have continued quite diligently in the 12 or however many years you said it's been to continue to develop that relationship with God. And I still hear myself, just this week, another one of those I heard myself say, and it was like, oh, okay. So that's why this chapter is so touching to me, because I think it's at the core of my belief system. And I think that's part of what touches me.
Yeah, I saw that. I hear that. I applaud that. I am so thankful that it did lead our paths to cross so
Me
many years
too.
ago. And it's so rich. The concept of the divine, having a sense of a divine and having that be a guide, having that be a voice, having that be a feeling. I would not have understood this conversation back when I was in 1985. It's like, yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. I get plenty of signals from the external world. Thank you very much. I'm already in overload. Thank you very much. I can't be bothered, or I don't even believe that there is that direct communication, if you will,
Yes.
or beacon that is sending out a Morse code or something else. And if it is, then I'm not getting it, or I don't have the receptors for it, or it just doesn't exist. People are hallucinating out there doing something. It was foreign to me, just plain and simple, foreign. And like I said in my little introduction I just read myself, it's like I was at my wit's end. I was exhausted. I was depleted. I was feeling like there's a hole inside of me, an HOLE. And I was desperate to hope that there was a divine something. Hopefully, there's something hopefully out there that, can come and rescue me or communicate with me. So I guess my question is, how do you nurture that? How do you, once you've come to okay, so I believe that there's something out there. How did you nurture that? Because you're way advanced in your story than I was in 1985 in my story, my journey. But what did you do to nurture that? What do you do to nurture it now?
Well, first I want to say that I was on the island with you in 1985. So I had been
You were, I didn't
exposed
see
to,
you there.
I was one of these people going, oh my gosh. I had been introduced to a couple of spiritual concepts, but I was not living or embracing them. How do I grow that? Gosh, that's a good question. day by day, minute by minute, I have developed almost what I call a friendship with God. And so I'm in constant communication. Rarely do I make any, well, I don't think I make any decisions, maybe an occasional split second thing, but I don't
Sure.
make decisions without going inside, listening to guidance, listening to wisdom beyond me. And I've just little by little integrated this little piece. I have certain prayers and meditations that I use. I'm big into affirmations, and so I use those. I also use the transformation game, which is a board game that I've become accredited in facilitating, that is the most amazing tool for self-discovery. And it's all divinely guided. So
Wow.
I don't know, piece by piece, Peter, I've just surrounded myself with high energy, with always staying focused, that even when I can't see it, there is 100% of the time a higher truth. And I just believe my job every day is to shorten the gap. So, you know, we have Ukraine going on right now. And while it's horrendous to the people that are involved and many people around the world, I know there's a higher truth. I don't know what it is. I'm not, you know, the seer who has all the answers, but that faith that there is a higher truth is, for one, it brings me comfort. It brings me peace. I don't freak out with everything that happens around the world, even though I have to work to stay out of sadness sometimes, or, you know, just the disbelief around some of the things that we're encountering. But then I, you know, hopefully shortly after I have that thought, then I remember, okay, there's a higher truth. What is the higher truth? What is the truth for me? What is this circumstance showing me? What is it inviting me into?
Wow. Yeah. Wow. There's so much there. I want to go back and get a few things, but the thing that is the last thing that you said is that it all boiled down to me. It's like, what's my role in this? How does this impact me? What do I need to do to send out love, compassion, energy, understanding, as opposed to getting embroiled in everybody else's business, quite literally. And, you know, hating them or not having compassion for that. And then like I say, in previous sessions, I've said, you know, what am I adding to the, you know, the emotional soup of the world, right? Am I adding a hate and discontent? And that just adds more hate out there into the cesspool of hate that's going to float over to Ukraine and, you know, this month, right?
Yeah.
Or do I add a sense of loving, compassionate, I wish the best for everybody, and have that higher thought and have that on a daily basis. I don't have it on an hourly basis. I'm not that conscious. Maybe I will someday. Maybe in another, you know, 14 years, I'll have another retrospect of the retrospect of the retrospect. Say, all right, so I'm not.
Well, we all have to have something to aspire to, right?
That's right. There's more.
Yeah.
You talked about the transformation game or board game or something. Could you just say that out loud, and Chella will put it in our chat box for people to refer to? What
Sure.
is?
Thank you. So the transformation game, as I say, is a board game. It was designed and developed in Findhorn, Scotland. And if you're not familiar with the story about Findhorn, I won't go into the whole story, but it's very fascinating. It was considered one of the first, if not the first, intentional sustainable community in the world. It's on the northern coast of Scotland. And there was a woman, Joy Drake, who really wanted to, you know, figure out how to bring that community experience out into the world. And so they developed this game, and you get born and you travel, you know, you play it like Monopoly. You roll the die, and instead of
Okay.
landing on Park Place, you land on an angel square or an insight square or a setback square. And you were born on the physical level, then you move to the mental level, the emotional level, and then the spiritual level. And
Wow.
what it does is it shows us what we believe,
Yeah.
because it's all divinely guided. Here we are with the divine yet again. It's all divinely guided. And I facilitate games. I do free demonstrations about once a month for people who just want to, it's like, what is this thing anyway? So that's a tiny bit about the transformation game. And it is a phenomenal tool, I think, for self-discovery.
That sounds brilliant. I know Finhorn, or I've read certain things about Finhorn, but I did not hear about that game or that evolution that came out of that.
Mhm.
And as you described it, it's like what we do in Coach for Life in terms of the fifth quadrant. Start with the body, the physical, then go to the intellectual, and then the emotional, and then the spiritual, and kind of, what are all the programmings that come out of each of those segments as I grow up until I don't know who I am. Because everybody else has defined it for me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, Bryce.
The
Now
world
I'm
is
back.
very good at that, isn't it? Defining us.
Yeah, and mostly, they're well-intentioned. My teachers didn't say, have Peter and say, okay, so what can we do in the classroom today to screw up Peter, and he needs therapy at 37. That's not, that wasn't their intention.
Yeah.
But anyhow, transformation game, super. If Cello would put that in the chat box, that would be great. How do you sustain this? How do you talk a little bit about that, but the sense of, do you actually hear words? Do you sense it in your gut? Do you put a question out to spirit or to your divine, whatever you may call that, and say, God, I need some help here? What's a mechanism, I guess is what I'm asking. What's a mechanism of making the connection and the reconnection on an ongoing basis?
These are great questions because I've never articulated any of this. And so a lot of it is in words. I hear words. I say I get downloads.
Yeah.
Often because I've developed a practice really the last 2 years since COVID. And I just kind of call it sitting with it. And so I sit with a lot of things now. And I have developed the practice of, if I'm reading an article or I'm listening to a news program and they talk about something that maybe I have some belief around. Now, often I'll pause the TV or set the book aside and sit with it. It's like, okay, do I still believe that? I used to believe that. Has my belief system changed? And sometimes during those sitting with it, I just start to get ideas. I have learned, I always have a notebook and pen nearby because I've learned just to write it all down. And sometimes I actually create programs from that or use it in coaching or in some, way in my personal life. And I don't know, sometimes I've begun to think, and this may sound really crazy, that sometimes maybe I'm just supposed to download it and bring it into the earth plane. And it's not necessarily that I'm supposed to do something with it. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense to me. There's two principles here. One is just to be with it. Let's just let it kind of resonate and actually look at, what kind of a belief do I have around this? And does it continue to serve me? I use that one all the time because beliefs are in the human plane. They're not in the divine plane. Number two is this something for me to do? Is this my work to do? Or is it just I need to bring the consciousness, into form or onto the planet's, physical plane as opposed to the ethereal plane? And that's my job. That's a piece of my job to do. And then it's for somebody else to take that. But I love that. And of course, the journaling is my go-to. I have to do it by longhand, get my pens that I make and I write it out and my journals. I got about 6 journals that are around the house. And so whichever one is the closest, I'll grab it and, start writing about whatever.
Yeah.
But the idea of taking it and examining, okay, first of all, there's a noticing, something's going on here that I just was interacted with or that got landed in my lap through, watching the news or having a conversation with somebody or reading something. Okay, so I noticed there's something that's prickly about that maybe, or something there for me to do. Then to take time to think about it, write about it. And I categorically love and applaud you for, is that an old belief that just sprung up? And do I still believe it? Because at one point in my life, again, circa 1985 and before, I thought beliefs were hardwired. I did not have an understanding or a belief that you could change a belief. No. That's what I believed since I was a child. That's what my parents believe. That's what my grandparents believe. That's what society believes. Thank you very much. I can't change that. And it turns out I can. And a lot of times I should. And a lot of times I have. So there's an awareness and a consciousness and self-responsibility that comes with all of that. A conscious human being. What a concept, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And goodness knows that's what the world needs more of.
Amen. I'm going to open this up to, we have a number of people that are with us today in the inner Zoom room. There may be some more in the YouTube live streaming. Let me get my chats up here and see if there are any questions specifically that comes in from there. I'm not seeing questions. I'm saying hello to Peter and hello to Ann. Welcome. Okay, great. Special edition. Intentionswork.com. Okay, that's how you can get a hold of Ann. And I've also got her email and phone number as well that you have on your website, so I can share that as well. But I'm going to open it up to questions. We have we're about halfway through here. Questions from any of the Zoom room attendees that have a question for Ann in terms of, or how you do this. How do you access? How do you talk to? How does sense of divinity show up in your life? Cello, you can just unmute them, or you can unmute yourself.
No question yet.
No questions yet. Okay.
From
Great. Thank you. Let me just expand that. There we go. All right. Well, then I'm going to ask, when you recall a past event like you did in this beautiful story, I saw you get emotional towards the end, and I just froze, but I'll continue to ask the question so you can answer it. What does that remind you of, or what does that reinforce for you relative to your relationship with your divine?
Well, I think it brings my connection to God just so present in the moment. It is my relationship with God, and that's my preferred terminology. I don't care. It could be spirit, the universe, but my preferred terminology is God. And I think it just, I feel that I have such a precious relationship that I often am brought to tears sitting by myself, just thinking through. And I'm going to try to keep some of that emotion down right now, because it is so precious and so prescient. Is that the word? Prescient. So alive. My spirituality is alive in me. It's not something that I pull off the shelf when it's convenient. It seems like every moment. Obviously, I get involved in projects, and when I'm sitting on a coaching call with somebody, I'm not over here thinking, but it's so present that when I can pause for a moment and just reconnect with the preciousness of it, that's when the emotion comes. And rereading what I had written all these years ago, and it's as perfect for me today as it was all those years ago.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. I continually get reminded that I am a spiritual being first and foremost. I mean, that's again, that's a belief, but that's my reality now. The human form, the body, the age, the current activities, industry that I happen to be involved in this particular day, minute, hour, week, is secondary. So the epicenter of Peter Redding is a divine being. And I forget that, by the way.
Sure.
It's like I get caught up in my stuff.
Oh,
And I forget that, yeah, this is just a physical thing. This too shall pass kind of concept. But when I do remember, and I remind myself, or like I said, I get a download is how I say this. You know, I'm struggling with something. Okay, so what's the divine plan? What's my part in this? What's my role in this? And for me, it comes as it's not a flash of brilliance necessarily, but it's there's a feeling that I have inside my body that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Even if somebody doesn't like it, even if it doesn't make commercial sense. Yeah, that's the signal. That's and it's humbling. It's
Yes.
incredibly humbling that my God, my spirit, I call it spirit, my spirit has this connection that is part of my being. It was there even when I didn't know it. It's there now. It'll be there until I die. And who knows, maybe afterwards. But there's that sense. And part of it is for me to be quiet. Like you say, just kind of sit down, turn the TV off and be with. I love that, just to be with it. To have that quiet moment of communication, receptivity. So I've come a long ways from the point of, geez, I hope there's a divine something out there, because I need rescuing. Thank you. Dear God, if there is a God, please be merciful. Lead me out of the darkness. I mean, it was a dark place that I come from, and it had physical toll on me. At 37 years old, I felt like a 70-year-old man, even though I wasn't 70 at that point. I was exhausted. I was spent. I was physically, I couldn't do it. I just barely get up. I'm healthier now than I was then because of this. I'm probably 3 times healthier, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, than I was at 37. Wow. And there's a vitality, there's an energy now directly because of this one principle that not only do I have access to it, but it is part of me. Yeah. There's a wonderful meditation that the Heartfulness Foundation, heartfulness.org, has. They've been around for, I think, about 140 years. They're out of India, but they're worldwide, global. And they offer meditation for free for anyone that wants it whenever they want it, literally 24/7, 365. And in one of the meditations, they talk about that divine spark emanating from within me. Not from Olympus, not from the Himalayas, not from, Washington, D.C., but from inside of me is the origin of that divine spark, that divine knowingness. And I really like that because in lots of faith traditions, they talk, you're a child of God. You are a child of God. Well, I take that seriously now and literally, and so are you. And so is everybody else. It's not that I'm the only one. Now, I'm not the chosen one. I am in a sense of, but then again, there's also 7.4 billion other brothers and sisters on the planet that were the chosen one to have this human experience. And so that kind of lightens things up, number one. Oh, good. It's not all on my shoulders. I can barely handle what's been given. but that is a piece of me. That's not just a part of me that sheds after, okay, so 40 years old, you kind of lose it, sorry. No. Every single day, that is part of my being. And so, okay, so where does that, how does that inform me? How does that inform my actions? How does that inform my choices in front of me for the work that I do, the work that I've been designed to do? And it's the alpha, it's the genesis, it's the beginning of something special that I have embodied as a human being. And so part of that is taking time to re-access that. That's why meditation is so powerful, I think, or prayer, or being in nature, or spending time with, these little urchins of kids that we call children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, wherever you are in that scenario, that life cycle. Because it reminds me of the divine. It reminds me of pureness, of innocence. So here's the question to the group. Okay, I want you to type in the chat box, each of you that have kind of been listening in here. Where's your spark of inspiration come from that you believe comes from the divine? And it could be very physical, it could be very practical, it could be very worldly. But where do you get that spark of divinity, that reminder? Just type 1 or 2 or 3 words, sentence into the chat box. I want to read some of these out.
Oh, I can't wait to hear these.
And I've got a question already coming in from Kay. Thanks, Kay. Great to see you here.
Oh, hi, Kay. We were in class together.
Were you really? I'd forgotten that.
Yes.
Well, she says, would enjoy hearing the subtle experiences of downloads of questions, etc., in coaching sessions. Oh, now we're combining all the points of reference here. And I get all, when I swear, when I get all energized, I freeze. So let me unfreeze me.
Got all that spark going on, Peter.
It is. All right. So we got, we'll come back to that question in a second. I want to read some of these. I surround myself, as from Charles, I surround myself with reminders of infinite intelligence, an altar wall, etc. So there are objects that do that for me. There are events that do that for me. There are people that do that for me. Just sitting down with my journal. Going and do woodworking for me, believe it or not, is one of mine. It's I get reconnected to source. I get reconnected to my divine. And Vivek is saying my little I doesn't do that because that's the human side of things. Yeah. It's almost I have to get beyond myself. I have to kind of shrink it's all about me, and get to the higher plane, if you will. So how would you address this, Kay? Because you're still a very active coach, a master professional coach. And so let me read it again from Kay. Would enjoy hearing the subtle experiences of downloads, quote unquote, downloads that you and I have both talked about now, of questions, etc., in a coaching session or as in the act of coaching. How would you address that?
Hi, are you asking me to respond to that?
No. I'm asking Ann to respond to that. What comes to her with that question?
Great.
Well, I think that's such an interesting question because I am still actively coaching as well. And I've never thought that I got a download in in the way I describe downloads that I've experienced in a coaching session. However, I never feel like I'm by myself when I'm coaching. And so, things come, ideas come, I see connections between things. Well, if this is true, then how does that work? And so I guess in a sense, those are downloads. They're certainly inspiration from beyond me. And so I feel like I have a co-pilot, and I think that's part of what gives me confidence, notwithstanding the tremendous training that I took.
Yes, let's not forget that part. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, honestly, Peter, I'd like to say that I didn't even realize the impact that my training with y'all would have. Okay, here we go again. You opened up some possibilities for me, unintentionally perhaps, that still, well, you can see, still bring me great emotion to this day. So I'm very grateful to y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. I received that. Yeah, and I think Kay is kind of tapped into, because I'm a divine being. Guess what? I'm a divine being when I'm in my woodworking shop. I'm a divine being watching football games with Marsha yelling at the guy that just fouled and said that, the ref didn't get it. He fouled him. He fouled him. And it's with me when I'm coaching. So the subtleties of it, in some cases for me, is not so subtle. It's just, there's a question that's obvious that it was not thought up by Peter Redding, the human being, but it is flowing through me. In the vernacular of the ICF, at least the old terminology was honor your own intuition, develop your own intuition. And for me, intuition is the divine speaking words or images that come flowing through me that are stimulated by my Mobius connection with my client. So as I am deep in connection with my client, the topic might be this, but the energy that's coming through from my client is also their ecosystem. Maybe it's their culture, maybe it's their sexuality, maybe it's their people that are in their lives that they haven't necessarily spoken to in this particular coaching session. But so I wonder what you're talking about might be impacting your mate, your spouse, your kids, your team members at work. And so I am conscious to that and open to that when I go into coaching session. The tool that I continue to use to this day and teach, I was just telling Ann before they started today, we just finished another 5-day part 1, as all of you that have been through Coach for Life's training know, is the core self. Everything that we're going to be talking about for the next 21 weeks is how do I know the client's core self, not their persona, not their, yes, I live in Tokyo, Japan. Yes, I have a very important job. Yes, I make a lot of money. I can travel, blah, 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 blah. Meaningless, basically. I mean, it's part of their ecosystem currently. But deeper down than that, in the foundation session of finding out who they really are, who they were created to be. And when I can connect my beingness to that beingness, there's almost like a direct conduit. And so sometimes I am the mouth, I am the language that client is emanating without them even knowing they're emanating it. So that's very powerful. And again, that's, we're talking about MCC plus level here. We're talking about spiritual MCC. I'm going to come back to you as a good coach does, Kay, and say, how do you do it? What do you notice?
Great. Well, to be completely honest, before sessions, I do a meditation where I connect with my own guidance and I ask for the connection between my guidance and theirs their higher guidance to be open. And then when I go into sessions similar to what y'all are saying, I do feel, intuitive hits on questions, directions, connections that do feel like they're coming from higher guidance. And it's so energizing and exciting to be connecting with the client at that level, and with our own, both of our spiritual connection at that level. I like the way that you worded it, the connecting my beingness to their beingness. And so it's very, and then I come off the session feeling alive, energized, really enlivened by that experience of that connection flowing through me.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. It's not 1 and 1 equals 2. It's one spiritual being plus another spiritual being is infinite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the other piece that's triggering for me in terms of self-mastery. Again, kind of the topic is I can't do that. I could not have done that at 35 because I'm too much in my own stuff, and it's all driven from the external. So the principles that Coach for Life has had for the last 25 years has been about getting to know the client at their core, and us as coaches having a continuing sense of self-mastery, which means examining the beliefs, as Ann had talked about earlier, and letting go of that. Does that still work for me? Is that still germane? Is that still a part of my operating system or not? Yep, it protected me during my 30s and 40s, and thank you very much. Okay, I don't need that anymore. It's bogging me down. It's weight. And the ICF in the last 5 years has had a huge press on the sense of self-reflection that a coach has to do personally to continue to self-reflect, continue to self-develop, continue to let go of those things as a human being that no longer serve. Now, the last words are mine, but basically that's what they're looking for. And I want to be that clear channel without all the stickiness or sediments or plaque of all the things that I've had to deal with in life. Clean that channel out so that I have a clear communication, clear channel at that spiritual level that you're addressing right now. And so it explains what happened. I did a demonstration, as I normally do in the coach training, as you know. And this happened to be in India back, I don't know, I'll say 10 years ago, when I was there in person before the COVID hit. And I was asking for feedback, and one fellow, raised his hand and said, "That was just plain unfair. You ask exactly the right question, exactly the right time for this exact client." And it was like, where did the hell that come from? And I couldn't explain it at the time. I just said, I don't know. It just seemed obvious or apparent that this is whatever. But what you're asking about now, tapping into now, is an explanation of what happened then. It just came through. Because I'm a clean slate, or as clean as I can be as a human being for that particular client or that particular coaching session. And so, boom. And I love that. And I love that we're even talking about that for coaches that are just getting into coaching. You ain't seen nothing yet. When you aspire to be at the level that Kate is at and Ann is at, and to have that sense of connection with your client at such a level that just things come through. It just comes through, and don't be afraid to ask it. Yeah. Let me see, Larry's got here. Let me just come back to that. Mine tends to come mostly in and during quiet meditation periods. Yes. And that's the beauty of meditation. It's just, thank you for that, Larry. Christine says, Anne, I share your passion and have had a similar impact by watching Peter in person, witnessing his brilliant spark. Well, I love that one. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And love right back to you, Christine. I'm sure that you are modeling that for others as we speak. She also says, I'm inspired by all the beauty in nature that God created. Yeah, it's so fabulous to just be in God's creation and be a witness, be a recipient, be connected with. My inspiration comes from the words and feelings my clients express to me. I feel the confirmation that God created me to be my natural self.
Mm.
Amen. Hallelujah. God bless
Yes.
you. I see we're about 3 minutes remaining here. And so I want to go to, let me just get your information up here. Here she is, Ann Ranson, 972, I assume is a Texas exchange. Ann at Ann
How could you
Ranson.
tell that I had?
I know, girl. And you can find her at Intentions Work. Love that domain name.
Well, actually, that's in transition. So I'd
Oh, is
like
it?
to also direct people to annranson.com. I'm in the process of combining everything under Ann Ranson. But either way, you will get there.
Fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. And let me just, wait a minute, let me get my, so that you can actually see this, everybody. I'm looking at it, but I realize that you're not. So there you go, Ann Ranson.
Thank you.
.com. And what else have I got here?
Can I say one quick thing, Peter, in closing?
You certainly can.
So I think sometimes I'm reflecting on what I've shared with you today, and I think I make it sound like this just happens so easily and living, a God-centered life just kind of happened. But my son went away to college in 2009, and I kind of used that opportunity to really focus on working and building my relationship with God. And so I didn't start, I wasn't this way in 2009. I had a little bit of this, but I have intentionally and actively worked to build. It's not work, it's not hard, but it is, it's like one of my spiritual teachers used to say, it's simple, but not easy.
Yeah, it's
So
intentional.
I just
is
don't
what
want to
I'm hearing.
misrepresent and have people think, oh, well, it just happens. It's years of practice and joyful work, I would say.
Amen. Yeah, and the word I would use, it's intentional.
Yes.
It's there. It's always been there. I really believe that in me, even when I was obtuse to it, even if I was abusing it, even if I was not focused on it, it was still there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an itty bitty tiny voice down there somewhere that I just did not hear.
Yeah.
And was not tuning into. So thank you for that. And it's a journey. It's a continuing journey. It continues to today for me. All right. Well, thank you all for showing up. Anne, you were awesome. You are awesome. You've always been awesome, even before I met you. And thank you so much for being the inaugural principal #1 storyteller. And God bless you, girl.
Well, this was a delight, Peter, to reconnect with you and this material and just to reinvigorate. I'm so glad you're going to do this series because positive, all the things that you write in your book are just so timely, again, instilled.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to just do one little thing here and get to, let's see. Well, I lost it.
Peter, while you're doing that, if I can just read Kay's message.
Yes, please.
Anne and Peter, love hearing your journey to connection. Woohoo!
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think I've got what I'm looking for here, just to kind of tee up next week and give you a tantalizing tidbit. There it is. Principle number 2, your divine nature is resourceful, whole, and complete. And if I can locate or find the author of that story, then they'll be featured, as beautiful Anne has demonstrated today. Some people I've lost track of, or they're on to other things, or they're retired. I don't know why they would be, but they're retired. So when we can get the author of the story, I will be featuring them. And Anne, again, thank you so much. And everyone that showed up today, I appreciate your presence in my life, and God bless you. Namaste. Be safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. You're awesome. I love you.
You're positively brilliant.
You're positively brilliant. I need to use that as my tagline now. Yes.
Yeah.
Bye-bye,
Wonderful.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.